One, two, one, two. All right, let's roll.
Welcome. You're listening to the Saddle Up Podcast,
where we discuss everything related to UTRGV athletics, past or present. We'll catch up with old teammates, friends, and take you down memory lane
with exclusive interviews.
This is the Saddle Up Podcast,
the voice of your covered walkway streets. So dope.
This is gonna be awesome.
Stay tuned for new episodes every week.
From Bronx Village to the Fieldhouse, we'll cover it all.
Hell yeah, dude. Carpe damn.
So saddle up and let's go.
Let's go. Saddle up, partner.
Hey guys, welcome to another great episode of Saddle Up Podcast. I am your co-host. You already know who I am. G, welcome to the show. Thanks for showing up again. I know everybody enjoys you being here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's in my contract, so I really can't miss a show. But I'm excited for this one, man.
Yeah, and as you can see already, we have a great guest, Mr. David Hinojosa. David, thank you so much for joining the show this week.
No problem, man. Thanks for thinking of me.
Now, I know you and I are Facebook friends, so the one thing I have to ask you is, are you wearing jorts?
I am not. I just thought I'm not. I'm not wearing jorts today. They're all in the laundry basket. How about that?
But what shirt are you wearing though?
What shirt are you wearing though?
Okay, so this is a shirt I bought at the bookstore, the old bookstore, probably been about 25 years. It's a UTPA football shirt, and it says "Still Undefeated."
Yes, sir. So
that's the only. So I think I was trying to think of, I'm a big fan of the graphic shirts, and I said, well, this is probably a good one to wear. So
yeah. Now, for those in the audience that don't know exactly who you are, what is your significance with Pan Am? Like, why did we want you on the show?
I don't know, but I have a couple of connections to Pan Am. One, I went to school there. I got my bachelor's and my master's there. But I used to cover Pan Am for the Monitor from I think it was 1993 to 2000. I covered Pan Am, and it was an interesting period. I'll put it to you that way. I don't know how much of that you want to get into.
It was a lot to cover, huh?
Yeah, we don't got enough time for all that. But, and then in 2000, I ended up going to the Dallas Morning News, and so I was there for 8 years, and then I got laid off in 2008, and I ended up going back to the Monitor in 2009, and I enrolled in grad school at Pan Am at 2010. And I ended up getting my master's degree. It took a while, so I wrote a thesis, and I moved back to San Antonio in 2013. I got my thesis. I got my master's in the summer of 2015. I was the last class of UTPA. So they had just, and then that fall they switched over to UTRGV.
So you are one of the last graduates of obviously UTPA, correct?
Right.
Wow. Now let's kind of rewind back to the 93, 2000 era, because that's where we all met, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, during that era, there was no lack of content for you to cover, right?
There was too much content to cover, yeah. I started working at the school paper at Pan American, and I don't remember what year it was, but Kevin Wall was the coach. And when I got there, he was going through his thing, the NCAA problems. I don't know how specific you want to get in it, but as I was a college guy covering that, then Mark Adams took over and covered. He had some really great teams. They got into a mess there with the NCAA. And then Delray Brooks. I covered Delray Brooks for a couple of years, and then he had all kinds of stuff. And then the last coach I covered was Bob Hoffman. I covered him for 1 year. Then I went to Dallas. So. Yeah. And this is a Pan Am or a whatever, Pan Am friendly podcast. So I'm gonna let you dictate where you want this to go, and I don't really want to get into too much of it either.
I do. I appreciate that. I was kidding with you. I always kid with you that you had a lot of fans during your writing, except for one, right? And you know who that fan is, or that lack of fan is, right? And
Yeah, your mom.
To give you, let me. Can I tell the story, please? Because
it's not my fault any of this happened. But go ahead.
So who I'm referring to is my mom, and so David was obviously doing his job, and Mom listens to this podcast. She's probably gonna be mad at me that I tell this story, but David was doing his job, and he was just covering, the team fairly and writing what he needed to write. And I guess my mom took offense to the way your perspective or your outlook was. And this is kind of almost like pre-internet, like, the internet had just come out, like, so my mom took the time to figure out how she could get in touch with you. And I think she wrote you a letter. And
probably. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, David, you probably have that letter somewhere.
Yeah, I got
saved it, right?
It's back here.
Is it on the wall?
It's off the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my mom, yeah. So I still kid my mom about that.
I'd
give anything to read that letter. See exactly what it said.
Well, I'm gonna jump around a little bit here. So I will say this, and I covered a lot of stuff there, Matt. When Delray Brooks took over for Mark Adams, his introductory press conference, I'd never met him before. I went to introduce myself, to him. And with Mark Adams, Mark used to let me come to practice and just kind of check it out.
I remember that.
I think he knew us smart enough to know that I wouldn't be able to divulge any plays because I'm not that smart. But I used to go there. I used to go there to get interviews and get whatever I needed, whatever I was working on that week. So I used to actually travel I used to cover the Bronx on the road. So it was just kind of a lot of that.
Yeah.
I go to shoot around. So it was pretty casual and it was pretty good. It was a really good relationship. And then, so I basically went up and I asked Delray, this is what I used to do. Are you cool with it? And he goes, well, that all depends. And I go, okay, well, all right. This guy came from Kentucky, right? So he was a Rick Pitino guy. So I said, all right, what's a big time guy, right? So he goes, well, it just depends. I'll let you come to practice as long as you write positive stories about us. And I said, Coach, I can guarantee you this. If you do positive things, I'm going to write positive stories about you. And here's what he said. He said, you know what? I like that answer. And then, and when he was getting into his stuff, I will say this about him. Let me put that pin down. I would say this about him. He returned my calls, or he had his lawyer return my calls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if it was just from that initial meeting that I had with him, but he had enough
respect.
He had enough. I don't know if respect's a word, but he knew that. Look, man, this guy came up to me. I was being straight with him, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how, and that particular exchange is how I explain things to coaches who tell me that. Said, you write positive stories about, so well, do positive things. And I guarantee you. And, I'm covering high school sports and we don't really dwell on the negative too much, in terms of like player performances or even coaching, there's enough schools where we can hype up the good
matchups. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, every once in a while there's things that happen, but 99% of the time it's that. But that was, I mean, the fact that, you guys could look up what he went through, but it was a lot. There was like legal problems. I mean, there was like an embezzlement thing. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff. And he called me back. I mean, I saw him at one of his courthouse appearances, chased him down, and he gave me an answer. I mean, he wasn't like, I don't think he was happy to see me, but he didn't like try to run from me. So
and for the record,
they were.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Matt. Well, there were a lot of ups and downs, and we were going through ups and downs also, within the team as well.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, and in the in light of the positives that we mentioned, that Delray mentioned, and even the positives in your career, when you were there, when we were there, 93 to 2000, I'm going to test your memory a little bit, David. Who and you can't say Matt because Matt is on this show. Who would be your favorite player in that time, in that era from 93 to 2000? I know a lot of them came through. I'm not sure if you were specific to basketball or if you covered all of
basketball,
UTPA
baseball
sports.
were my main. I covered women's basketball, which
also,
they were also in the same conference with Louisiana Tech.
Oh no, yeah.
Shout out to
I
Michelle. Yeah.
covered both Lalo Rios and Araceli Rios.
Oh
Wow.
man,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sally is his sister. Yeah.
Sister.
His sister.
Dang.
So besides Lalo as well, what were kind of the notable guys that and ladies and players that you covered through in that era?
In basketball, probably one of the biggest storylines was Brian Merriweather, because he was one of the top.
Man.
I think he ended up being a national scoring champ, or at least for 3-pointers, right?
Yeah. He
was
led
definitely up there.
He led the nation in 3-pointers and 3-point percentage, and he was second in scoring.
Yeah, he was there, and he made a run at it.
Yeah.
And he was fun to cover, because he was such a great shooter, and he's real quick. He had a real quick release, and when he just needed like a little opening, he was gonna nail it, and he was gonna nail that shot, So I'm trying to think back. That's probably the most memorable one, because there weren't, it was a tough era. Now, Mark Adams's team that made it to I think they made it to the semifinals in the Sun Belt. I want to say it was 97. I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah. That team was a really good team. It was the team that I thought if Pan Am was going to get to the dance, it was going to be that team. They ended up losing to Western Kentucky in the semifinals, and it was at Little Rock, and they had they had like a guy. That point guard was named Greg. I can't remember his last name.
Greg Guy?
No, it was another Greg. He was from like Chicago. But they had they had Charles Williams, Reggie Scott, I think was his name.
Yeah, it was 93,
94
that they were there. Yeah.
I was earlier than that.
Yeah.
Well, that was to me, that had to be, look, I haven't seen Pan Am play in the last whatever years, but I can't imagine there's been a better team than that team since
they were good, 80s. David.
Since
they were really good.
That was a really good team, and they were a scrappy team, and they were really a product of, and it really showed me at that time how great a coach Mark Adams was, because I mean they were just they were scrappers, man. They didn't have like a big guy, but they had a lot of guys who just played defense, and that was a good team, man. It was like one of the definitely the best Bronx team I ever covered. And if you really want to stretch it back, it has to be the best team since they made the NIT back in 81 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think so anyway. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Oh no. I remember as a junior, that was 93s. I remember as a junior, I would go and watch as a junior and senior in high school. And we came to watch a lot of those games. And they were so fun to watch. They always looked like they were the underdog, but they would come out and just scrap the entire game. They were going to fight you.
And it definitely was. They definitely were a product of their coach. I think Mark Adams did such a great job with that team, that particular team, just finding those guys, and they really played that up. It's the best team I covered from Pan Am. And that was where I was thinking, you kind of get in the back of your mind, well, I wonder if they're going to send me to the dance wherever they send me. Then you end up losing in the semifinals, that's the most memorable team that I remember. For baseball, and I did get to cover Coach Al Ogletree.
Love that man. He's an awesome guy.
And it was like one of those deals where my dad, I grew up like 3 blocks from Pan Am. And my dad would take me to the field house to watch games. I mean, this is how old I am. I remember going to watch Abe Lemons coach with Marshall Rogers and Chuy Guerra. Yeah. I remember, I don't remember much about the games, but I remember Marshall Rogers wore number 14. I remember that. And then as a kid, we'd go like on Sundays. My dad had one day off a week. And if there was a college baseball game on a Sunday, we would just go out to Jody Ramsey Stadium and catch whatever. And then, there was that man, Al Ogletree, a little thinner, had not as much gray hair, and then then when I got to Pan Am, when I got to the on the staff at the Pan American back in 91 or whenever it was, I had 2 beats. I got the women's basketball beat, then I got baseball, and I got to talk to Al Ogletree, which for me, was amazing because I just remember watching this man coach, and then he passed away a few years ago. But after I left to Dallas, he would call me up every once in a while just to kind of check up on me. And when I came back to the Monitor, I think his wife had passed away, and he would call me at the office and just wanted to chat. And I was really sad, when I heard that he had passed away. But he was a good dude, man. He was a good man, and So yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there. So I've got a lot of history invested in Pan American, and when I was covering all the stuff in the '90s, you have to understand. One, I went to school there. I was a fan of the team, right? But I had to compartmentalize that,
Of course.
And I remember one. I won't mention his name, but he was kind of getting into my whole thing about how I report or whatever. I said, well, I went to school at Pan Am. That's where I learned how to do this. So you know.
Yeah, well, I learned it from you.
I don't know what to tell you.
Go talk to my department. This is where this is what they're teaching us, right?
You're talking to the wrong person, man. So yeah.
We David, just to give you a little bit of an Uncle Rico story, and I'll make it real quick because I could probably talk about it for an hour. Your favorite player to cover was Brian Merriweather. Okay.
It's most memorable, yeah.
Brian came in the last year that I was there, but he wasn't eligible to play.
Right.
So he would do, these individual workouts that coaches do with us. They would bring in 3 of us at a time in between classes, right? Do you remember that, Matt?
It was essentially he was essentially a practice player. Yeah.
He was a practice player. He never played in the game, and it was Delray's first year. And Brian, they brought Brian in, and I remember this big thing about Brian Merriweather, myself, Marcus Green. You remember Marcus Green, Matt? He was one of our other guards.
I remember Marcus. Yeah.
So we're us 3. We would shoot for about 30-45 minutes, and at the end of each session, we would play 1-on-1 up to 3. And one of my goals became to beat Brian Merriweather in those individual workouts. And man, I got him one day, and and everybody was talking about it that day.
Right.
G beat Brian Merriweather in an individual workout, and I think that got me at least 30 to 45 seconds of playing time that week when that happened. So I want to thank Brian Merriweather for letting me win that day. If you're out there, man, shout out.
G got one of his 5 steals during that 30 seconds. Yeah.
That's right, man. Thank you, Brian.
I remember, Brian transferred in from a NAIA school or a Division II that had just went to the national tournament.
Right.
And he came in and he wasn't eligible to play that first year. So him and John Braxton were essentially red shirts, right?
Right.
And so they would come in every day and practice just like us. And they were always on the kind of the second unit squad. And man, Brian was tough.
It was a big deal. It was a big deal. I think I still put it on my resume whenever I apply for jobs.
It is, David. It is on G's LinkedIn. If you're not friends with G's,
I'm gonna look it up now.
Look it up, yeah.
I've been trying to look to see if there was any footage that day because nobody seems to believe me.
The lost footage, the lost tapes.
Maybe David, because we've been trying to find Brian Merriweather. So if anybody's listening and they know how to get in touch with him, maybe you can tap into your investigative journalist, and see if you can find Brian Merriweather. We cannot find him.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on this thing called Google and see how that turns out.
We tried that.
That's the new thing. Well, I think we've tried.
I told you we went to the same school, right? So we know the same tricks, man.
So
that's right.
So we got a new sponsor, and it's Wing Bar, and we played like this little game, and we know you're a huge music fan, right? So G is gonna give you a lyric from a song.
It's gotta be good music,
and I don't think it's Nora Jones, David. So I
don't know. It's gonna be tough.
So, so this little segment sponsored by Wing Bar. They've got 10 locations in the Valley, and we'll get to your favorite place to eat in a little bit. But
it could be Wing Barn. I don't know.
It could be Wing Barn, right?
That's right.
And so while G's thinking of the lyric, what is your, and I kind of already know this, but what is your favorite place to eat in the Valley?
Well, when I go home, there's this place in Edinburgh. It's called Anita's Cafe, the Mexican restaurant. It's I started going there. I used to live right by there. I used to live over by BL Garza Middle School.
Yeah,
which is where it's located, nearby. It's a big Edinburgh North hangout for coaches and stuff. Yeah, it was just near me. I just went there one day just to check it out, and it was just one of those things where the people working there at the time were just great, and it was just kind of a, I don't know. It just became my place. It's, as far as the quality of the food, it's great quality, but I mean, I think if you could just go to any Mexican restaurant in the Valley and it's going to be great. It was about the people, and it's always been about the people that work there. And when I was going to grad school, I would study there, and I would just spend mornings there, and they didn't try to shoo me away. So that was always
nice. So it just felt like home, pretty much. That was
pretty much. And then I go there as often as I can when I do go home. I don't know most of the people that work there anymore because they've all since left, but it's still a very comforting place. Yeah.
Nice.
Do you know my stats for my career at UTPA?
I'm gonna say 1 point something.
Don't lowball me, David. Don't lowball.
Was that, did I hit the over?
I'm gonna take the under.
I don't know, man. 2.6. I have no idea, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. It's okay because we've mentioned it before, and I know Matt knows it. Yeah. And we're all winners here.
Yep.
Okay.
David, you win a gift certificate from Wing Barn just for participating. David is a huge Norah Jones fan. Like Norah Jones. Yeah. Norah Jones fan. Norah, if you're one of our listeners, David is a huge fan of yours.
Yeah, make sure you tag her whenever you post this. So
I will. I definitely will, David. I'm gonna tag Norah Jones on this. Yes.
All right, Matt, what were my statistics so that David can at least sleep well tonight?
Yeah, so you can go to bed tonight. G for his career scored 12 points, and he had 5 steals for his career.
That's right. That's it.
Like how many games though?
David, you know what? Yeah, you see, David's looking at the averages.
I was looking at the average. So
great one. One.
I definitely overshot it. So.
G probably played in 1 game, so he averages 12 points and 5 steals.
There you go. Oh, that's good then. That's a good average.
That's a great stat line, G.
It's better than Matt. So there you go.
David, I like that, man. That's an Uncle Rico stat right there. I like that. Yep, I got him.
I don't know,
Tina. That's hilarious.
I don't know if you're going to bring this up, but I'm going to. Okay. I want to talk about the game in 1998. I looked it up. December 22nd, 1998.
Oh my God!
You guys are about to play Louisiana Tech. I think it was Delray's second year, right? Delray brought in all these freshmen, right?
Yep.
And it was 1998. I'm gonna say this. I tried to get to a game about an hour and a half, 2 hours before, just to kind of see if there's anything weird going on, right? Just like for instance, if I go to a football game, I like to go there early. I like to do little warm-ups. I like to make sure that the starting quarterbacks are actually warming up. Otherwise, if they're not, then that's probably going to dictate how the game's going to go. That's generally how it is in high school football. Yeah. So I go in, and I don't know, it's probably like 90 minutes before, and both teams are doing the shoot around, and I'm just looking out there, and I go, wow, I guess the other guys will be coming out here soon, right? So I just see 5 guys out there shooting around, and I'm like, okay, then you guys go in, and I don't remember if Jim McCone or somebody, I don't know if I remembered asking me or Jim McCone or somebody say, yeah, I've only got 5 guys. I go, what do you mean you only got 5? And then I think Bill Widener was the AD at the time, I think.
He was.
So I tracked him down. I said, what's going on? And then he told me, all these guys were ineligible academically. I think the fall semester just ended, and then you guys, I don't know what the thing was. So you guys only had 5 guys, right? I guess Louisiana Tech which was a really good team that year. They had the only one I remember from that team was Lonnie Cooper. He seemed to
the point guard.
He seemed to be a guy that played at Louisiana Tech for like 7 years. He just seemed
He did.
I think he's still there.
He was a lifer. Yeah, he's definitely
still playing.
I think he played with Karl Malone, man. So so I call my now late editor Roy Hess. I said, Roy, Pan only got 5 guys, so I got a couple of quotes from Bill Widener. I'm gonna hammer out a real quick story on this, and then I'll update it after the game. Thinking, be a 30-point loss and whatever, right? Well, lo and behold, okay, so I'm covering the game, and a guy by the name of Matt Palmquist picks up his 4th foul in the first half. And I'm going, oh, God. This is going to be a complete mess. And well, as it turned out, Matt did not foul out, but more miraculously, the Bronx won that game, 84-78.
Yep.
And Louisiana Tech went 19-9 that year. They weren't scrubs, man.
No.
And so that game was memorable in that sense. And I think I've shared this story once on my Facebook, but I don't think people would mind this. But after games, my whole routine, I would go to Jim McCone's office, who was the sports information director at the time, and we would kind of chat on whatever leftover pizza the players didn't eat. So I went in there and I got a slice of pizza, and Jim, we were talking about the game a little bit, and then he goes, "Hey, do you want to go get a beer?" And I said, Jim had never asked me that before, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a little weird, right? I go, okay. So I say, yeah, sure. And I used to live off of North 10th, and I think he lived in that area too. And we went to there's an Applebee's. I don't know if it's still there. There was an Applebee's on North 10th, so we ended up going there.
Still there.
We each ordered like a Shiner Brutus, those big ones, right?
Yeah.
And I thought initially, it was just weird that he asked me to do that. And so, I thought he just wanted to kind of, I don't know, maybe celebrate this crazy win. I don't know what he wanted to do. So no, and this is where it gets real kind of deep. And this is where, so Jim was telling me that he had gone to the doctor that day, and apparently they had found polyps, and he just found out that day that he was cancer. They weren't cancerous, and he'd been under a lot of stress until then.
Yeah.
And he was so relieved to know that he had. And Jim didn't really drink beer. I think he was more of a wine guy. So so he wanted to go get a beer. I think obviously his wife Jerry knew, but I don't think he had told anyone else. And at that point, I don't know if Jim had a lot of confidants there in the athletic department. So, but yeah, and that's the one thing I'll always remember.
How awesome is that?
That's the biggest thing that I always remember about that night, and Matt's 4 fouls. But yeah,
I had a double-double. David.
Double-double, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, Uncle Rico.
Everyone had to have a double-double, right? That's the only way you guys could win. So anyway, I just wanted to share that story because
That's a great story.
I don't know if it's out there, but of course Jim has since passed. I think he passed like about 9 years ago. So yeah. So. But yeah, that's one of the things that I'll always remember about covering Pan Am. If you want to talk about memorable stuff, that's definitely one of them.
I do remember seeing on your Facebook, and you commented on it all the time on mine, is like that's probably one of the greatest college basketball games you've ever seen in person, correct?
Yeah, it was if I were to rank anything that I've ever covered, that's definitely a top 10, maybe a top 5, just because of everything involved with it.
Yeah.
There was no rhyme or reason why that should have happened. I think you guys played Gonzaga the following game, right? And
yeah, it was we played the 22nd, then we had like a small break,
right? And
then we came back, we practiced a couple of days, and Gonzaga was next, and then we had Baylor and then SMU, and we were favored. Gonzaga was 26th in the country. We were favored against Baylor. And then I ended up fouling out of the Baylor game, and they ended up finishing the game with like 4 players.
Yeah, I remember I listened to that game on the radio, and I had I would listen to the game. That was the road game, right? That was in Waco, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would listen to games on the radio, and then I would write up a report. Yeah, I remember that. Gonzaga
was one of the best games ever, just because the way it ended, and They have not missed the NCAA tournament since then.
No, I think it was Dan Monson's. Was it his last year there?
It was his last year. He basically
went to Minnesota. Is that what?
Yeah, he rode that wave and got out. And Mark Few was the assistant, and then
he's
never left. Yeah,
he never left. But I remember it was a close game. I don't remember if it was the last second shot. I don't remember how that played out. I can't remember that.
Yeah,
I remember talking to Dan. I remember talking to Dan Monson after that, and you could tell he was just relieved that they escaped with a victory. Because because they clearly were not. I don't even know if they practiced for Pan Am.
I don't think they did. And we all had to get on the same plane the next day and travel. We all went to up Dallas, and it was I had to sit next to Casey Fromm, right? And so anyways, we hit that shot, but it was a great time to be a Bronc.
Well, that was that's a memorable game too. The other one that I remember, I don't remember what year it was. It was I don't remember what year it was, but it was the year when it was Derek Fisher's senior year at Arkansas.
Oh man, wow!
And I think it was his senior year, and
it was
95. It was 95.
And he hit the shot on Lalo.
95? Yeah. Oh, was it on Lalo? Oh Lord, I'm sorry, Lalo.
95, 96.
I mean, that was like the Black Mamba stuff before the Black Mamba stuff. That was a killer dagger shot, right? I mean, he nailed it.
Didn't he change hands? Didn't he change hands in the air?
I just remember nailing that shot.
It's crazy.
And I talked to him, and I was, who knew what Derek Fisher was going to be after that, right? I mean, play for Arkansas Little Rock. And so I talked to him. He was like the nicest guy, really, really chill interview. So I wrote some of him. I think I interviewed Whip Sanderson, was the coach at that time.
With his plaid jackets, yeah.
That's right. In retrospect, Whip probably shouldn't have been coaching anywhere. But anyway, but no, I talked to him. He goes, I go, hey, I
probably had a few beers.
I said, I have to talk to this guy. They just got one on a shot like that.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him. He goes, so he gave me whatever, and I said, okay, cool. So I wrote my story. But those are probably the games that I remember the most covering from Pan Am. Close losses. Well, one was a win, and the other two were close losses. But those are the ones I remember.
Oh man,
great games,
there weren't a lot of them, so I sorry.
Memorable.
Man.
We'll call them memorable losses.
Covering the spread.
We appreciate you. Right. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate you coming on the show. And we're huge fans of yours, and we wish you all the best. And we'll see you down in 2025 for the actual first game of the football season for UTRGV.
I get tickets. I covered Travis Bush, the coach. He was here at New Braunfels Canyon in Seguin before he headed down there, and I covered his dad, Bruce Bush, when he was at PSJ North. And
wow.
I'm old.
You gotta wear that. You gotta wear that shirt in the fall.
Yeah, I probably will.
A year from now.
Should.
Still undefeated. Yeah, awesome.
David, I'll figure out how to get those gift cards to you.
We'll get you the gift card.
Thanks for playing. Thanks for playing.
I that lyric sounds familiar, but the Guns N' Roses just aren't going to register for me right away.
Well, you still won anyways. You're a winner in our book, David. Thanks so much for joining the show this week.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care, guys. And we'll see you next week. All right. V's up.
Like we weren't supposed to come up with something this clean. Like something happened.